Good morning, church. Welcome. We're so glad that you have stopped by, whether you're live with us on Sunday morning or you've stopped by in the middle of the week when you found some time. We just trust that you've come ready to worship and to learn together from God's Word. Well, we received a few new greetings from you guys, which we so appreciate you sending those in. So let some of our friends do a few more greetings this morning.
Take 79.
Hi, church family. It was so much fun to see all those videos. We really enjoyed that. Tim, you play percussion really well. We were impressed. I retired for the second time yesterday, and I actually quit working. So retirement is great.
We really miss everybody, and we look forward to seeing you actually face-to-face in person someday.
Time for my nap.
Hello, Mount Scott Church family from Oak Grove, Oregon.
We miss seeing you in person. We hope to see you soon. God bless.
Always so much fun. Please keep sending your greetings in, and we'll show a few every Sunday. And don't forget, we'd love, if you can't record yourself, if that's not your world, we would just be delighted, Steve or I or Brian, somebody to just stop by and get you really quick on recording. So let us know if that would be fun for you to participate in. I also want to remind you before we get deeper into the service to stay in tune after the service, after communion. Stuart Schmaltz, our board chair, will be bringing us an update about our merger talks this week. Some of you are aware that Dr. Andrea Cook retired last week after 12 years as the president of Warner Pacific University. We are so thankful for her and so proud of her and her leadership, both at the school and also here at Mount Scott, as she's the last several years chosen to worship with us and helped us at many key points in our visioning and our leadership here at Mount Scott. We thought it'd be fun to get an update from Andrea today and just get to hear what's next for her and what's next for the university. And she'll also introduce us and talk a little bit about the incoming president, Dr. Brian Johnson. So in your homes, welcome Andrea Cook to the table.
I'm really pleased to share with you just a little bit about the new president of Warner Pacific University. Dr. Brian L. Johnson is the 8th president of Warner Pacific beginning on August 1st, 2020. Just to give you a little bit of his employment background, he has served in higher education for about 20 years in various posts, from being a faculty member early on in his career at Gordon College, and then more recently as an administrator. His most recent post was at Mercy College in Manhattan, New York. It's the main campus is in another part of New York, but they have a Manhattan campus, and he was the senior campus administrator at that location. He was the vice president there. Mercy is a Hispanic serving and minority serving institution. It's a bit more diverse than Warner Pacific, with about 60% Hispanic students and 30% Black students. Then from 2014 to 2017, Dr. Johnson was the president of Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama. This institution was founded by Booker T. Washington, and it is a historic Black college university. It's one of the HBCUs. Prior to that work, he worked at Austin Peay State University and has served in a variety of roles, doing everything from strategic planning to fundraising and those kinds of things. His education is really strong in the liberal arts. He has an English major in the Bachelor's of Arts program at Johnson C. Smith University. He earned a Master's of Arts from the University of Wisconsin at Madison in English. And then he completed his PhD from the University of South Carolina. His major was in English, where he focused on 17th century Puritan English, 18th century colonial literature, and 19th century American literature, and then also did a minor in African American literature. He has been named a W.E.B. Du Bois Scholar, and so he comes with just a lot of great experience, and he and his wife Shamika Barnes Johnson have 2 sons. Their sons are Brian Asa, he goes by Asa, who is 16, and Nathan, who is 15 years old. And Shamika is the vice president for Bank of America. He just came to Portland and will be getting himself acclimated to our city and to the job, and then plans to be in the office and ready to engage fully as of the 1st of September. But he brings a great academic background as well as fundraising and administrative experience to the role. Dr. Johnson and I met for a couple hours during his visit to Portland back in May and had such a great conversation. And it's clear that he feels God has called him to this place at this moment. He's served in institutions that have not been faith-based, so he's excited to be in a place where he can fully express himself as a follower of Jesus Christ. So I hope you will have an opportunity to meet him sometime in the near future. So I am excited to welcome him to the role. Then there were some questions about what I'm going to be doing. That's a really good question. My plans right now are really to just take a break. I have worked constantly since I was 21 years old as a financial aid administrator, and then have worked my way through higher education and served the last 15 years at Warner Pacific. And so I'm going to take a bit of a break and just wait on the Lord. One of the things that when I look back at my journey, it's been really clear that God has been very faithful each step along the way. I was telling somebody yesterday that I last applied for a job in 1983, and everything since then has come to me, that God has provided and opened the way for it. And so I trust that whatever I'm supposed to be doing in the future, that God will make that clear. I don't think I'm going to retire in the truest sense of the word, because I think that God has work to be done on this earth for his kingdom, and I look forward to being a part of that in however he wants to use me. Just a little bit on what's happening at Warner Pacific in this moment. We shifted to online education in the middle of March, and over the last several months, the staff and faculty have been working hard to prepare for this fall. It's with the coronavirus, it's kind of a moment-to-moment decision-making process on what things are going to look like in the fall. But the faculty and staff have done a terrific job in being prepared for whatever might come. Just by way of example, we had 4 teams that were doing planning throughout. One focused on the academic program, another that was focused on campus preparedness and response, another that's looking at the financial realities of the coronavirus and what the implications might be there, and then finally a communications team. And it's been interesting to make decisions in this moment to think about how we can continue to provide a great education for our students while also keeping both them and our faculty and staff safe. So we have put in place plexiglass guards on all of the counters, service counters. We have reduced our housing so that every dorm room, residence hall room, and apartment is a single room in the bedrooms so that they're distanced from one another. We have sanitation stations throughout. Meals will be served in a to-go manner, and so we plan to offer several classes in person, but in a very small classroom, number of students in the classroom in a larger classroom. So we're going to do all the social distancing, and if necessary, we can pivot at any moment to be online or in a hybrid situation. One of the things that's remarkable is that when we went to online in the spring, we had only one student who withdrew. Every other student stayed and completed the semester. And that's a testament to our faculty. They do education in a very relational way, and they found ways to do very relational education online. And it's been interesting to hear from students about how well they felt cared for despite doing their classes in an online format. So it's not what any of us would like as far as the educational process, just like here at church, we'd all like to be together. But in this moment, we're learning a lot about how we can love one another and how we can care for our students, even though we aren't always together in the classroom. So it's a strange time to be leaving the university, but I know it's in good hands with Dr. Johnson and with the senior leadership team that's just phenomenal. And they're well prepared to serve students well and do a great job in the coming year. So thank you. I look forward to seeing all of you at another time, and hope that we can be back together in the next weeks ahead. So thanks.
Thank you, Andrea, for sharing just a little bit. We will be praying for you, and we will continue to pray for Warner Pacific University. Well, we get to welcome a familiar face back to the worship platform this morning. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle and CJ and worship team. Let's do this together.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord.
trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, and in the evening, in this coming, and you're going, and you're weeping, and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you.
The poet Henry James wrote, "Summer afternoon, summer afternoon." To me, those have always been two of the most beautiful words in the English language. I particularly feel that way about the month of August. It seems every year that June and July just kind of fly by, and all of a sudden we're in August, and I always think, oh no, Summer's almost over. I better stop and have some fun and relax and just breathe a little bit. So I've learned that about myself, and so I know that I'm going to carry that into our preaching schedule as well. So we try to plan something a little bit more fun, a little bit lighter, but yet meaningful and rich with life for the month of August. Hence our current series, Summer Playlist. Josh, I thought, did a great job last Sunday opening up our series. And we did have some concerns voiced about his driving. In fact, Allegra, listening in, watching in from Austin, Texas, recommended that Jesus might want to take the wheel. And we agreed with her. So thanks, Josh, for opening the series last week. We all loved it. The premise of this series is that God is not limited. He's not limited to religious things. He's not limited to Christian things. To speak to people about himself and about life. My first profound experience of this very thing, so similar to Josh's story, came to me as a teenager. I know that some of you have heard parts of my scoliosis story, but I've got to tell it a little bit. I'll do it brief and maybe in a little different way this morning because it ties in to a song that God used to impact my life. And that song will then lead us into one of our favorite chapters in the Bible, Luke 15, on lost things found. Well, at 13 years old, I was running the bases in a baseball game when I experienced severe pain. To make a long story short, I ended up hospitalized that week, and the very next day, my parents and I were told that I had severe scoliosis, which is a fancy name for curvature of the spine. Mine was pretty much an S shape, 45-degree curve. Next came a body cast and followed quickly by what is called a Milwaukee brace. I joke that that was not exactly the fashion statement I wanted to make as a middle school girl, but you know, you got to work with what you got. My doctors also pulled me out as they're putting me into this lovely brace. They're pulling me out of everything that mattered to me, sports and cheerleading. In fact, anything that had to do with running or jumping, I was not supposed to do. Well, spiritual directors like to ask us about those milestone moments in our lives. Well, where do you think God was in the midst of all of that? And I think that's honestly a great question to ask. So let me give you a little background. At 7 years old, in church lingo, I gave my heart to Jesus. If that's a strange word to you or you're not quite sure what it means, basically it just means I chose to trust Jesus with my life as much as I understood it at 7 years old. And you know what? 7-year-olds, they have a lot on their plate. I'm not kidding. I did, and I think 7-year-olds today even have more on their plate. And I thought that Jesus sounded like somebody I could really trust with my stuff and with my life and with my plate. So for 6 years, I sought Jesus as my friend, as someone who cared about me, listened to my deepest concerns, listened to my prayers about people that I loved dearly, particularly my older brother who was always in trouble. Jesus was just there for me. That's how I experienced him for 6 years. He was my confidant, the somebody I could pull into partnership with me in my little life. When scoliosis rocked my world at 13, I felt betrayed by that relationship. I didn't understand. Why would God allow that to happen when he could so easily straighten my spine? Okay, maybe it would take him 6 months, but could he just get it done so I could, be back to the life that I loved? But that didn't happen, and I was crushed about it. Counselors tell us that anger is really a secondary emotion, and that the primary emotion to anger is always hurt or fear. Well, let me tell you, anger was definitely my secondary emotion, and I became, at home, a very difficult person to live with. Wait, I think I just heard an amen from my mother out there in TV land or internet land. I hear you, Mom, and I know it was the truth. Once a month, my parents had to take off work and drive me for years to the big city, to Pueblo, Colorado, to meet with my orthopedic doctor, to get x-rays done and brace adjustments. And my ortho doc had told me, okay, well, most girls, now I'm 13 years old, because most girls stop growing at 15 or 16, and that's when you can quit wearing the brace. You just need to stay in this until you're done growing, then you're good to go. 15 came, 16 came, 17 came, 18 came, 19, and I sported that lovely brace on into my college years. I watched every time my parents drove me, I would watch those x-rays. We just needed to see two bones come together, and that would mean I was done growing. End of story, I was back to life. So you can just imagine what those drive homes were like every time those bones still hadn't come together. Let's back up. At 15, I had really begun to adjust to my new normal, as we like to call it today. I discovered, wow, there really is life outside of sports and cheerleading. And as my anger began to wane a bit, I found that I was missing a relationship with God. I don't know how else to put it. I just missed God. I missed my friend. And I found myself wanting to re-engage, to be able to pray for people again that I cared about, to have that confidence back in my life. Before that, I had really pushed God away, and when I did what so many country kids do, what so many kids do anywhere. I just started partying. I did the party scene. It's the worst thing I could think to do, to kind of get back at this God who had hurt me so deeply. And I have to tell you that mostly, and if you're a teenager and you're exploring, or you're preteen and you're thinking about the party scene or whatever it is that they call it today, can I just share with you that I was surprised how mostly ridiculous I found those parties to be, and how sad. I just found that they increased my sense of loneliness and my sense of confusion. So at 15, I was kind of fed up with that. It just wasn't doing anything for me. So one summer night, one warm, beautiful, probably was August, I think it was an August evening, my cousin and I were doing what country kids do. We were driving the back country roads, listening to the radio with a six-pack between us, when a song came on the radio. And here's where I wish right now that some of you guys were here and I could say, oh, do you remember that group called Bread? David Gates was the lead singer, and many of you would raise your hands, and I wouldn't feel like I'm the only old person in the room, because young people probably don't remember or know who David Gates and Bread is. But the song that came on that night was entitled Lost Without Your Love. It's not a Christian song. It is not about God. But for me that night, it was. Take a listen.
Lost and all alone, I always thought that I could make it on my own. But since you left, I hardly make it through the day. My tears get in the way, and I need you back to stay. I wander through the night and search the world to find the words to make it right. All I want is just the way it used to be, with you here close to me. I've got to make you see that I'm lost without your love.
I still get emotional when I hear that song because I remember how lost I felt at 15 and how invited I felt by God that night through the means of that song on the radio. Luke 15 is a chapter of lost things found. Jesus tells 3 parables in that chapter about a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. The setting for those parables is given in the first 2 verses. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. So Jesus told them a story. I'm not going to linger on that opening sentence, but I don't want us to miss it. Tax collectors and notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. Notorious sinners, not the ordinary run-of-the-mill sinner like you and me, but those bad dudes and those seen as traitors, not patriots, but traitors to the Jewish people, not only hung out with Jesus, but they wanted to hear what he had to say. And so with these really bad dudes listening in, Jesus told not 1, but 3 parables to reveal God's heart for lost things, for lost people. They were listening in, but Jesus spoke directly. His audience that moment, he turned directly to the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the law keepers, who kept voicing disgust over who Jesus was eating with, drinking with, and spending time with. Now, there's a lot going on in these 3 stories, but the common theme is joy and celebration over something that was lost that is now found. In the first, a shepherd leaves 99 sheep and goes looking after the 1 sheep that has managed to get lost. Sheep, I understand, are not all that smart. I think that's God's sense of humor, that he often compares people to sheep. So there you go, God's sense of humor on display. The shepherd finds that lost little lamb, carries it on his shoulders, brings it home, and once he gets home, he calls all his family and all his friends and says, "Hey, celebrate with me. I found my sheep that was lost." Jesus moves right on into the next story. A widow has 10 silver coins, and she loses 1, a significant loss for her. Jesus pulls the listener in just a little bit more intently and closer by asking them a question. Don't you think that she would search diligently for that lost coin? She'd probably light up the whole place, don't you think? Don't you think she would sweep the entire house until she found that coin? And again, at the end of that parable, that which is lost is found. And the widow calls her friends and her family and says, "Guess what? I found that lost coin." She invites them to celebrate with her. In this session of parables, Jesus does not leave it to the listener to make the connection between the parable and the spiritual truth. He's going to spell it out for them. So after the first one, he says, there is more joy in heaven over 1 lost sinner who repents than 99 people who never have strayed. And after the second, he drives it home again. He says, in the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when even 1 sinner repents. Okay, that third parable. It's longer and it's more complex because it's about a family. And can we just get real and say, families are complicated? So listen to Andrea read the story of the prodigal son.
Luke 15, 11 through 32. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now instead of waiting until you die." So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, his younger son packed all his belongings and took a trip to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money on wild living. About the time that his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him to feed his pigs. The boy became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, "At home, even the hired men have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I'll go home to my father and say, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired man.'" So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long distance away, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son." But his father said to the servants, "Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf that we've been fattening in the pen. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found." So the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. "Your brother's back," he told them, "and your father has killed the calf that we were fattening and has prepared a great feast. We're celebrating because of his safe return." The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, "All these years I have worked hard for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the finest calf we have." His father said to him, "Look, dear son, you and I are very close, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found."
Wow, a child spits in the face of everything you value. Everything that you have taught him or her, all of your hard work that you have done to give that child the good life. And they spit in the face of it all, and they walk right out of your life. In the first two parables, we see the shepherd and we see the widow go after diligently that which has been lost. In this one, when it comes to sons and daughters, often our only recourse, or actually it's not our only recourse, often the best recourse is to let go, get left behind, pray, and simply wait. The actions of that young son were despicable. The disrespect shown, the rejection, especially in that culture, all of his actions just screamed, "I just wish you were dead. I could care less if you're alive or dead. I really just want your money." That's what his actions said. He was insolent and arrogant and foolish beyond words. And so off he went. And the world he chose had its way with him and left him bruised and broken and sleeping and eating with pigs. He hit rock bottom pretty hard, and he woke up in that moment realizing what a fool he had been, and one hope surfaced. that dad would take him back, not as a son, he didn't even expect that, but as a servant, because dad had a good reputation for taking care of his laborers. And so the son came back ready to grovel, sincerely wallowing in shame, ready fully to admit that his dad had been absolutely right and he had been terribly wrong. And then in that parable, with the very next line, Jesus reveals the heart of God. And while he, the father, while he, the son, was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. And filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son and he embraced him and he kissed him. The very next thing he doesn't even hardly let the son get a word out. He immediately reestablishes him as a son and not as a servant, places on him a royal robe and probably a signet ring and the family emblem for a son, and he kills the fatted calf. And this father does exactly what the shepherd and the widow did. He throws a party. And I mean, this time it is the biggest party. And everyone on the farm, on the ranch, is invited to come to this party to celebrate. For the son who was lost was now home. We get lost in life, don't we? For a variety of reasons, we get lost. I got lost because I was hurt, I felt betrayed, I got angry, and so I ran. I just ran. Some, like the prodigal, get lost because in their arrogance, they're really pretty sure they know the way to the good life way better than the Father knows. Others have never had anyone give them a roadmap that God provided for this life. Or they've never had somebody tell them a story while eating and drinking with them about a father who loves foolish, notorious, betraying sinners. One who will absolutely throw the biggest party ever for them if they choose to come. Not a quiet, discreet, because we're all really kind of embarrassed about you, but you're home, so we're going to throw a party for you. No. No. The kind of party that this God throws for any of his children who come home is full bore, out in the open celebration that they have returned. The father, if you notice in the story that Jesus tells, doesn't reprimand the son for getting lost. The son's done enough of that himself. Okay, so that's that story. Now, the key purpose for the direct audience that Jesus is speaking for that day comes at the very end of the final section of the story. The older brother. He wasn't about to celebrate for this kid brother who has come home. N.T. Wright does such a beautiful job describing this moment. I'd like to read you all 3 pages, but let me just share a paragraph with you. And for any of you older brother types out there, and who doesn't have some older brother, older sister attitudes in all of us? Let me share this paragraph because it's going to soften the blow. He writes, the older brother shows in his bad temper that he has had no more real respect for his father than his brother has had. He lectures him in front of his guests and refuses his plea to come in and celebrate. Once more, the father is generous, this time to his self-righteous oldest son. At this point, we see Jesus is not content simply to tell the grumblers that they're out of line. He wants to reason with the Pharisees and the lawyers and to point out that though God's generosity is indeed reaching people they didn't expect that it would be extended to, it doesn't mean that there isn't any left for them. If they insist on staying out of the party because this just isn't their sort of thing, They can do that. That's up to them. But it won't be because God doesn't love them just as much. Some of us get lost right in the middle of being religious. And sometimes we are the most lost of all and the hardest to find. Many of the notorious sinners around Jesus came to love Jesus, while many of the religious people did not. But either way, whether you are a sinner or a supposed saint, you're loved. You're waited for. You're invited to the party. And God hopes that you'll come. And the rest of us, God hopes will join him in his joy and his celebration over one sinner that comes home to God's heart. Steve, come and lead us in communion this morning.
On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread and the cup, symbols that were very familiar to those disciples that evening, and he gave it new meaning. We've heard that today as Pastor Denise has shared with us about the lost who were found. Those disciples had no clue that even in their chosenness they were lost, but soon they would understand. And we come every time to this table remembering that we were the lost that were found by God, a God who pursued us and who loved us and who brought his grace to us as he brought himself to us. And that night, Jesus took the bread and he blessed it, as every good Jewish man did at these Passover celebrations. He gave thanks to God for it. Join me in prayer. Father God, we bless you. You are truly a God who provides for us. You provide our daily needs. You provide the bread of life. And you have provided your Son for us, Jesus, our Savior. We thank you and we bless you through Christ. And Scripture says that he took the cup, which was the new covenant in his blood, and he said, every time that you drink of this, remember me until I come. Friends, the bread and the cup, Jesus Christ, our Savior, who has found us again. Amen. Well, we thank you for joining us in worship today. I invite you to stay for just a few more minutes as Stuart Schmaltz brings us another episode in our merger talks. We will see you next Sunday. God bless you.
Hey, Mount Scott family, Stuart here. I'm following up on a video Denise did last Sunday where we're looking at trying to keep you updated on the process of our merger discussions with New Hope. And so last week she talked about what type of merger we're looking at doing, and today I thought it would be nice to talk to you about the timeline for this merger. So we've got 5 stages in this merger timeline, and the first one is entitled Exploration, and it's actually been completed. It began mid-April and ended June 4th, and this is where the idea of the merger was actually put on the table for discussion. We consulted with outside counsel to seek advice. We were asked to read a book entitled Better Together. We met leadership from New Hope. They got to know us. We spent time in prayer. And at the conclusion of stage 1, we all felt that there was growing momentum towards this concept of a merger, so we pressed forward into stage 2 entitled Negotiations. And that began June 5th and is scheduled to run through the end of this month. Negotiations is where key leaders sense growing momentum and we create a path towards a merger. So what have we done? We had a Zoom meeting with the Board of Elders over at New Hope along with our board, our directors, and we got to know each other. Introductions were made. We spent time in prayer, and it was a very warm feeling. So that took place early on. we put together 3 different merger teams. There's the Mount Scott merger team, the New Hope merger team, and a joint merger team. And all 3 of these teams are meeting weekly. There is a group of us, the 2 chairs are meeting along with the senior pastors on Tuesday mornings, where we're just trying to make sure we're staying connected and we're thinking through and praying through all aspects of this merger. That's been very healthy. We are trying to figure out best ways to communicate. You guys, some of you participated at the communication opportunities we gave on a Sunday afternoon in our sanctuary. We've been doing Monday musing updates on the merger. We are looking at these videos now as another asset for communicating, and say New Hope's done Zoom meetings for their congregation. So, and we want to make sure we are always communicating as new information is coming out. We're working on what we're calling a fact sheet, which is frequently asked questions. This will be available on both churches' websites, and basically, like it says, it's frequently asked questions, and there will be answers for everybody to look at. And if you see a question that isn't on there and you'd like to ask it, please ask, and we'll do our darndest to answer it, and hopefully we can. I know we can. We'll figure it out. But we need to know what's on your hearts too as you navigate these waters with us. We're also wrestling through, in the book, has 24 specific issues that need to be discussed. And so Denise next week is going to give you all an overview of what those are, so you get a feel for where we are right now on these discussions. And please be praying with us as we really navigate that piece, because that's a huge piece that we really want to do right for both churches' sakes. So the idea is, once we get through stage 2, both leadership teams will then make a recommendation on whether or not Mount Scott will join the New Hope family in the adoption model discussed last week. On to stage 3, which is entitled Implementation. It would begin September 1st and run through October 2nd. And here's where the leadership team from Mount Scott and New Hope would agree that Mount Scott would join New Hope in the adoption model. So as we work through this one, we would look at creating a post-merger team and an integration process. We would begin to hold town hall gatherings and do updates, answer questions. We would create a facility team to look at doing updates to our building and even our property. We'd look at updating all of our equipment in the sanctuary. There's so much technology that New Hope can bring to the equation to make our worship experience so much better. And during this period, we'd look at staffing and job descriptions, and we would then, towards the end of stage 3, vote on the merger. So our Mount Scott congregation would vote, and New Hope would seek affirmations as to wanting to go forward with this merger. And I'll let John at some point talk a little bit more about that. And then we go to stage 4. Stage 4 is where we consolidate. It's called consolidation, October 3rd through October 30th. What we're saying here is, hey, we're doing this. God's DNA is all over this, and we're feeling like this is such a God thing that we're doing this. So what we would do during this time period is, again, October 3rd through the 30th, is both congregations would hold their final gatherings. We would make sure all the legal requirements have been executed. We would begin to execute new systems and procedures. And again, we would just be communicating all through this process. And the fun part is, during this period, we would actually hold our first joint service together as a new church family. So the conclusion here is Mount Scott and New Hope begin to function as one church. And then we move to stage 5, beginning November 1st and running through January 31st. This is entitled Integration. This is where New Hope has adopted Mount Scott family to be part of its community. So during this time period, we would conduct post-merger evaluations. We do want to know how we're doing. We're going to want to hear from everybody. We want to hear goods and bads. We're going to host gatherings for the staff and elder and key leaders where we just celebrate the journey we've been on and celebrate what God's done and what He's going to do. We would have some town halls for our neighbors, because the neighbors have been very interested in what Mount Scott's doing with our property and buildings. So this is going to be exciting for them to learn about the merger and the new opportunities coming out of it. And during this period, we'll also probably be beginning some updates to our building. So the story ends this way in the timeline. The merger of Mount Scott and New Hope has created a better story. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of the timeline and all the pieces that are within that. And please continue to join us in prayer and look for next Sunday's update, where Denise will be talking about the 24 issues that are being discussed now. God bless all. Thanks again for joining me.